So we've got a new house. Well, new to us. It was built 47 years ago, and it was from the original owner. So it is remarkably well preserved, just not updated in the least, which I kind of get a kick out of. And the house came with a built-in vacuum. The lady, among other brochures, she even saved the brochure for the faucets, which I thought was pretty neat. Look at that. If she had bought the chrome ones instead of the gold ones, maybe we could keep them. But anyway, she kept the brochure for the central vacuum. And before seeing this house, I had never heard of Corbett Industries or Corvac. I was trying to figure out what kind of inlets these were just from the real estate listing photos, and I can't find anything on the internet about them, but this brochure is kind of neat. I wish they had the receipt showing how much this system cost them. Looks like they only made one model, two-stage 7.2-inch motor, and a foam filter. So kind of like a Magivac. In more ways than one, the inlets are similar to that too. And this company was from Texas, from Dallas, like Magivac. So I don't know, maybe one copied the other or something. But for the half dozen Magivacs I've seen in the Chicago area, never one of these. We've got the little manual for the power head. Of course, the Preco power head came with this system. And the neck is broken, as you'll see. And they're long gone also, Preco incorporated. Warranty. Proper care. Kind of nice. I mean, nice for being, I guess, a low volume company. They had nice literature, and the unit they built was good quality. I just don't like the principle it works on. And she had the name and number of whoever installed this thing written down. And so there was a box in the basement with the original hose and the tools. The wands and the crevice tool came with it too, but I don't have those handy. It looks like they bought the attachments and maybe the hose from Eureka. This is a Eureka style handle with that sharper radius bend instead of the long curve. And here are the inlets. And I had never seen these before. They are standard size, so you can plug an 1.5-inch hose in them. Actually, they're slightly smaller. They're more like a Newtone size. But when you flip these open to 90 degrees, the system comes on, and when you go all the way open, then it shuts off again, which is kind of nice because you can turn the system off without unplugging the hose. But the contacts, the spring tension is just caused by the plastic flexing, and so these are a little temperamental. And the sound of that suction is not from the original Corvac machine. That unit must have not really worked very well. It would have been way undersized for this house. There's 10 inlets here, actually 11, 7 on the main floor, 4 in the basement. I have to add a couple more because like the sunroom and the workshop are not well covered. But this is it's a pretty big place, lots of open space here. Of course, since we haven't moved in yet, there's very little here. Oh, let's see. So we're in the lower level. I wanted to look at what kind of installation had been done, and overall it's pretty good. You can actually see inside this rear mechanical room. Here's the back of a basement inlet. So the screws from the inlet go right into the flange of this Type 90. And just based on that connection that they made, you can tell that the installer knew what they were doing, because that's not only did they use a Y instead of a T, you know, they did it properly. They didn't drop down for the basement inlets, so, and that was a good sign. You can see other parts of the system But can you imagine using that Preco power brush on this brown thick carpeting, or the green thick carpeting on the whole main floor? So they did that. They've got a capped off T-fitting with some coiled up wire as if to extend that to a basement inlet, but they serviced this inlet from another part of the system, obviously, because that was never used. Oh yeah, you can see it there. Okay. And some short 90s in the tubing system, I guess because they had to fit it in there. So not ideal, but shouldn't ever cause a problem. This house has a bunch of weird angles, and so you can see how that doesn't come through at a straight 90-degree angle. This house is sort of built on about a 30-degree angle. It's got wings to it. It's kind of neat. But this would have been a tricky connection, and they did it the right way. So that was very good. This again, short 90. We've got another. This comes from the inlets at the other end of the house there. And going through what's going to be the workshop, just painted, into the utility room. Oh, and there's the original crevice tool and wand and floor brush. So I guess the one I showed you was a different one, but it had the standard Eureka tools. And there's the machine. Korvac. 115334 motor, completely worn out as of quite a long time ago. I don't think this thing has been used in decades. External control box. Corbat Industries, number 2057. So if we're to believe that, I don't know, either they started at the number 2000 like I do with my checks, or they actually built over 2,000 of these things and they're somewhere scattered around the country. So again, even if this thing had worked, it would not have been sufficient. That motor does a nice job, well, a decent job for its day in houses with, 3 to 5 inlets, and this house has 10. We've got a cone there. It's kind of like a Hayden, among other units. And so the air would come in, swirl around, and they had this sort of deflector, this baffle, whatever you'd call it, to make the dirt spiral down. And then that sheet metal is obviously not stock. Somebody must have forgotten or thrown away the big washer that holds the foam filter on. And there's your big, stupid foam filter. This is actually brand new, or at least it doesn't have any dirt on it. Somebody, when this thing stopped working, they must have just tried the filter just to see, and of course that didn't do it. If you look down at that motor, that is the impeller in pieces, and so even before the brushes wore out, that's what was spinning at 15,000 RPM. This thing had to sound great. So anyway, oh, here's an inlet. So I already took out one inlet to extend the pipe up to a different inlet, and so I cut out, this is the original, this had a flange that was attached to a stud, and then these screws are just going into the flange of the 90-degree elbow. Kind of funny looking fitting there. And then there was a reducer collar, and that was what would actually hold this to your elbow. And then your inlet itself, and you can see the 2 low voltage contacts just connect with a brass strip on the top of the plastic door. And so the flexing of these things is all you get. And 50-year-old plastic can only flex so much. So I'm expecting to have to replace these at some point. And my initial thought was to use a commercial Filtex with the 7.5-inch motors. This machine's such a beast, I love it. But it was loud as hell and just didn't give you a really tremendously good performance at the end of the hose. So I went with I guess you could call it a commercial MD unit. And this has two 7.2-inch motors. It's a Model SV. The original unit hung there. I got some old gray pipe to extend it down so it looks like it's always been here. I'm running it off the original circuit, so we've got this cord plugged in, and then this transitions to 30 amp because this thing, even though it draws like 20, it's on a 30 amp service, and it will be on a 30 amp service as soon as I get around to it. But this is only temporary unless it works. And here's our electric service in this place, 400 amps. This was an all-electric house when it was built in 1970, so that's the reason for that. Anyway, so that's our central vac. There's another look at some piping. And so I'm not going to mess with the installation. The new unit's already in. I'm going to add a couple inlets here and there, and we'll be good.